Hi, my name is Jake Alcott, and I am Vice President of Government Affairs at Bitsight. And today I'm going to be sharing some insights with you into two significant developments in cybersecurity that companies and investors should be aware of. The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission's cybersecurity disclosure regulation, which was passed in 2023, and the new cybersecurity framework that was updated by the U.S. National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST, which was released in February 2024. Let's begin with an overview of the SEC's cybersecurity disclosure regulation. In July 2023, the SEC passed a new regulation requiring public companies to disclose material cybersecurity risks and incidents on their corporate filings. This regulation was created because of concerns that the SEC had over lack of public disclosure around cybersecurity risks and incidents. The SEC was concerned that adequate information was not being shared with investors in a timely manner. This regulation went into effect in December 2023, and annual 10-K filings should now reflect these new requirements. So what are public companies supposed to do? Public companies are now required to disclose information pertaining to their cyber risk strategy and governance on an annual filing, a 10-K. That includes describing processes for assessing, identifying, managing risks, management's role and relevant expertise in cyber risk management, and board oversight of cyber risk, which includes identifying board committees and board committees responsible for cyber risk oversight. Material incidents have to be on the 8K corporate filing within 4 business days after the company determines that a material incident has occurred. So this regulation applies to all publicly traded companies in the United States. It also applies to foreign private issuers. So this change is going to affect many non-US based multinationals that issue securities in the United States, including certain Japanese companies. So this is a new requirement for companies, but organizations have actually been disclosing cybersecurity issues to investors for a number of years. The most popular methods to disclose information include the 10K and the 8K, which we've described, the sustainability report, an environmental, social, or governance report, a proxy report or a proxy statement, or a standalone cybersecurity report. These are becoming increasingly popular among companies who are trying to get their cybersecurity stories out to investors. And what can we expect from these new regulations? I think we're going to see an abundance of new disclosures on cyber risks and incidents in the months and years ahead. Already we're seeing the impact from these new regulations. When I think back to 2023, many companies began disclosing incidents like MGM, Johnson Controls, Caesars, and others that may not have been public in the past. In recent months, we've seen companies like Microsoft, Microsoft disclosed to the market that they experienced several severe cyber incidents, although they also stated that they don't believe that these incidents will have a material financial impact. Companies that are seeking to provide assurance to the market about their cyber risk management efforts, and they're disclosing quantitative independent benchmarking data provided by Bitsight. These companies are realizing that the market values independent data and comparative performance, and so they're disclosing some of the Bitsight information. And investors can also take advantage of the same data. Many investors are leveraging data like Bitsight's analytics to help them gain an understanding of cybersecurity performance. They can use this data to help them make better engage with portfolio companies to reduce risk. This data is providing them with quantitative insight to help them understand a company's risks. So now let's turn to the other major development, which is the NIST cybersecurity framework version. The NIST cybersecurity framework was originally released in 2014, and it was designed to provide a framework of essential cybersecurity best practices that could be adopted by organizations. The NIST framework describes efforts that organizations should take in order to improve their cybersecurity resilience, including how to identify, how to protect, how to detect a cyber incident, how to respond effectively, and then how to recover from an incident. Many organizations find the NIST framework to be useful to them because it consolidates a lot of cybersecurity best practices into one relatively easy to understand framework. Since 2014, organizations in various sectors and industries around the world have adopted the NIST cybersecurity framework. Now, there are no statistics available about how many organizations have adopted the framework or which organizations have adopted the framework, but it seems to be a reasonably popular approach, and I've certainly seen a lot of organizations talk about it. Although I don't have any statistics around adoption by Japanese organizations, I do believe that the framework is likely adopted by a number of Japanese organizations across different sectors and industries. Now, some organizations also use the framework not only for their security leaders to develop their cybersecurity program, but more importantly, as a way of reporting their efforts to the board. Now, in February 2024, NIST updated the cybersecurity framework to create a new version, the NIST Cybersecurity Framework 2.0. And there are two main updates worth sharing with you. The first is that NIST created a new governance function, and you can see this reflected in the visual on the right. This reflects the importance of organizations having a clear strategy, assigning cybersecurity risk roles and responsibilities within the organization, and overseeing cyber risk management efforts. You can see that in the past, this yellow governance function did not necessarily exist in the framework. And over the years, I think that NIST was hearing a lot of comments from various organizations and other leaders suggesting that the governance piece of this, of cybersecurity oversight, was really important and was lacking in the first approach. And that's why they made a significant effort to highlight governance as a critical function. The second critical update is that NIST created a new category on cybersecurity supply chain risk management. And this reflects the growing importance of supply chain risk management, but also the imperative that organizations have a strategy, they assign roles and responsibilities for supply chain risk oversight, they perform risk assessments, and other critical issues. The supply chain risk management category is actually contained within the new governance function. And it's actually interesting when you think about this, that the NIST framework includes this new focus both on governance and supply chain risk management, because it's actually very consistent with the SEC's approach. It's highlighting and board involvement in cybersecurity oversight. Interestingly, as part of the SEC regulation, the SEC also requires companies to disclose, quote, processes to oversee and identify cyber risks associated with its use of any third-party service provider. So both the SEC and NIST are focusing very specifically on management and board governance issues and supply chain and third-party risk issues. I think that's a reflection of this new reality, which is that both governance and oversight and supply chain are really becoming the two predominant themes that cybersecurity leaders are having to deal with in 2024. So what are the implications for the NIST Framework 2.0 for investors and companies? Well, for investors, you may be interested in learning whether or how your portfolio companies are aligning their cybersecurity programs to the NIST framework. We may see more organizations disclosing in their 10K filings that they're using the NIST framework. Remember that the SEC requires the disclosure of the process for assessing, identifying, and managing cyber risk, and the NIST framework does fit into that idea of having a process for these issues. For investors, I think you should think about the initiatives that the organization is thinking about related to supply chain or third-party risk as well, and that's reflected in the fact that that NIST is highlighting these issues. Companies should think about a few things. Some companies sometimes disclose that they use the NIST framework as their framework for approaching cyber risk assessment and management. I've seen this on some corporate filings that I've reviewed over the years, and I expect to see more of this moving forward. I would also say that companies who use the NIST framework should also use qualitative and quantitative data to track how well they're aligning to the framework. They should share this information with investors to provide assurance to their investors that they're appropriately addressing cyber risk management. So it's not enough to just say, hey, we're aligning to the NIST framework. It's better to leverage metrics and measurements to show, just how you're addressing each one of the items, the functions, and the categories of the NIST framework. So that's a quick summary of both the SEC and the NIST Framework 2.0. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, and I will now turn it back over to the team.